Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Halo, perkenalkan nama saya Shani Hadiyanto. Saya dari Gojek. Posisi saya di Gojek adalah Business Intelligence. Untuk talk ini bisa pakai bahasa Inggris apa bahasa Indonesia aja nih? Soalnya mungkin ada yang nggak paham bahasa Indonesia, jadi saya pakai bahasa Inggris aja ya. Oke. The title of the talk is Being a Pythonista in Gojek. If people here have not heard about Gojek before, so Gojek is an app company. We have multiple services like GoRide and Ojek and GoCar and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure you have ordered food before from GoFood. So I will not introduce more about Gojek. But what I will talk about here is how we are using Python in Gojek when in fact Gojek itself is not a Python company. So the talk will, I will talk about three things here. First, what is BI? BI is business intelligence. I will explain what does being a BI person means in Gojek. And then next is what is the role of Python in Gojek and what do we learn by using Python in Gojek. So a little intro about myself. I graduated in 2014 from ITB Bandung. I took engineering physics. So that was my first introduction to Python. Back then I do a lot of signal analysis and Python was one of my main tools. And then on 2015 December, I joined Gojek as a business intelligence analyst. So it was kind of funny story. Initially, a friend of mine who already worked there asked me to help him build a dashboard because the company needs to know what's going on with their data. And when he gave me the offer, I was still out of college, broke, doesn't have anything to do. So I said yes, and then after 4 days of working with Python, and just Python, Redis, and some HTTP API request. I built the dashboard for him, and then after that, they recruited me there. And then recently, I started to transition to a more dev-heavy role because initially I was doing analysis, but then I actually prefer to be a coder more than being business analyst. So yeah, that's a bit about me. What we do in BI at Gojek. So first, if any of you have ever heard about business intelligence before, here, does anyone of you have any idea what business intelligence means? Can I see a raise of hand if you do? Yeah, cool. So I've never been to be a business intelligence person in other company, but in Gojek, I've heard from my friends who was a BI person as well in their previous company. The condition is pretty unique because not only we talk with the management, the business people, we also talk with the developers, we talk with the operations person, we even talk with the call center teams. So being a BI person in Gojek is very central to everything that's going on. Like at 9 p.m. in the evening, someone might Slack you and ask if you can help them get some data or if you can answer some questions about the going-ons in the company at that time. So how we do that is by building products that will help our teams to be more data-driven. So our main goal is to make sure that the people at Gojek is making data-driven decisions because unless they have enough data to empower their business decisions, then it might not be the best decision they could make. Okay, so what does the daily life of a BI Gojek member means, and then what is exactly the things that we do there. So there are 4 main things that the typical BI Gojek member do. First is we work with exploratory data analysis and research. So this is the typical, the business have some questions, and then you look at some data, and then you do some calculations, and then you give answers for that. And then there's also data pipelines, or ETL. I'm sure, well, the ETL is short for extract, transform, and load. Basically, since we have a lot of data sources, so we use ETL to make sure that those data are available and easily accessible in the previous steps. So if the analysts are doing exploratory data research, then they need to be able to get the data easily. Not only that, we also build self-service tools and automations. So to empower our users, we want them to be able to use the data themselves without having to keep constantly asking the BI people for help. So we create like Slack bots or dashboards, things that they could use to easily access the data and get the answers that they need. And then the last part is tailored automated reports. So this is also part of empowering the people in Gojek. So usually when we do some analysis, we also add some additional insights there. Now these tailored automated reports are made for business users and then management, and we send them daily, but it catered specific to their own needs. So we created that after a lot of discussions, and then deciding what is the most relevant data that we can tell, and the story that is important to them. Okay, so next. Okay, so before this, so in all those 4 steps, Python is involved. But why do I say Python is involved? Because yes, we do use Python, but it's just a part of how we make all of that happen. Now, the reason is that Gojek is a polyglot company. That means that people in Gojek speaks multiple languages. Like human language, they speak Indonesian, English, and Hindi, I think, because we have offices either in Indonesia, Jakarta, and all of the cities in Indonesia that we open our Gojek there. And then we have offices in Bangalore, India, and then we also have office in Singapore. So the Bangalore office usually has the most devs in there, and then the Singapore office has the most data scientists in there. So that's why all those people have different backgrounds and different cultures, and they speak different languages. Now, the programming language that we use in our company is we also use a lot of them. So let me tell you back a story back in 2015 when I just first joined. So initially in Gojek, we only have one monolithic app. Initially, it was just a single Java app that starts to show its age and starting to become hard to scale. And then at that time, with the help of all of our developers, we revamped our architecture and then start to split the monolithic app into multiple smaller services. We take out functionalities and then we build them and rewrite them in other languages. So we tried Ruby and we deploy them using Java, so it's JRuby. And then we also use Golang as well. And then there's also Clojure, Scala, Swift is for mobile app, obviously, and then JavaScript for the web. And we also use some Python a bit, but nothing user-facing. So most of the Python that is being used in Gojek is to support the day-to-day workload of our developers and then our users. Okay, so the question might show up, why so many languages? Why can't we just pick one and be done with it? Because let me quote something called the Unix philosophy from Peter H. Salas. So there's 3 points here. The first one is write programs that do one thing and do it well. And then second one is write programs that work together. Now, the actual quote has the third point that says that you should write program that output text format and then raise from text format, but it's not really relevant here. But basically what it says that those programs need to be able to be composed together, connected, and can talk to each other. Now, the reason we use so many languages is that we found different languages has different niche. So when I mean niche is that when we have a specific use case, we found that it's easier to express some functionalities in some language, and it's also, and for different use case, it might be some other language might be a better case. Now, sorry. Oh, yeah. So it's not just the language that matters here. It's also the communities and the ecosystem around it. So just like what we know, Python has a lot of libraries, and that's also one of the main powers of it. And it's like that for other languages. In Python, you can easily find libraries for data processing. So that's why many data scientists are using Python, because it's the easiest way to do it. And then for web, I guess a lot of people are using Python with Django, or maybe Ruby with Ruby on Rails, and that's what they know first. So that's also the reason why we are using other languages. And why are we using Go? It's because that Golang has a really good web support for high concurrency applications that provides low latency. So we have specific niches for each languages, and the way we choose to pick which language we take is quite simple, actually. So languages, if you describe languages as having different level of expressivity, then Python and Ruby and all the dynamic languages is a bit higher level, you could say. And then Golang and C and Java is a bit lower level. And the way that we choose languages that we use is that we pick the level of expressivity that can that fits perfectly with the problem domain. So if the domain is something like business domains, it has a lot of business objects, and we need to model a lot of business process, then we use languages with higher expressivity. But then if the problem is very specific, that you just want to do some calculation and then return some output when some input comes into you, and then you just need the fastest CPU or the fastest processing time, then you would use C, Java, or Golang. So that's one of the way we pick the languages. Okay, so does language matter? Yes, they do, but not that much. So even though I said that some languages have specific niches, it doesn't mean that you cannot do things that other languages can do with one. So basically, you can do everything with Python. It might not be the best, but then it's still doable. Now, why do I like Python so much? It's because it's very easy to start with Python. It's very easy to start just building your applications and seeing what's happening, seeing if the application works, seeing if that the user actually likes the way the application works. So you can verify your idea. You can get your idea out into the open faster than using some languages that takes a lot more to master. And then, so this is quotes from my two colleagues. So the second one is, what matters more is that, it's better to do it now and be 80% correct rather than wait for perfection that never happens. So he always keep reminding me that if you wait until you get perfection, then you might never deliver. So that's why it's better to fail early and then improve and fix your mistakes. And then the second one is from another friend of mine, Shobit. He said that we can always rewrite it, and we will eventually. So it's fine if you start to build your apps in Python, and then if you see some performance issue, then you can use C Python Or then you can use Rust to improve your Python app performance. Or you can take out some codes and then interface with, I don't know, maybe protobuf, and then use other languages and build microservices around it. So basically, pick and choose what's the best for whatever you want to do. Okay, so Python users in Gojek mainly are these 5 teams. First is BI, business intelligence. And then there's also fraud team. The fraud team uses Python for analysis mostly, and data science, obviously. And there's also InfoSec. So InfoSec is short for information security. Basically, they do penetration testing, make sure that all of our APIs in Gojek are safe, and how they use Python there is they build the test cases using Python script because it's very fast to, like, when a new team builds a new product and new APIs, they need to quickly verify that it's working as intended. So that's why they use Python, because it's very fast to iterate and mock those APIs. And the typical developers also use Python, but not for the apps that we deploy, but for something else. I will talk later. Okay, back to here. I will explain in a bit more detail about the things that we do in BI Gojek. So first, exploratory data analysis and research. So as you know, we really like using Jupyter Notebook. If you ever heard about it or use it before, Jupyter Notebook and Pandas, raise a hand. Yes, cool. So why do we like Jupyter Notebook when we do our research and analysis? The reason is that we want those research to be reproducible and traceable, and it can be validated by other people. So, like, if some analysts do their calculations using Excel sheets, and then maybe next month they will need to do the same calculation, but then they forgot how they got their numbers. But with Jupyter Notebooks, we can write our code that pulls the data directly from the source, and then we can comment the approach that we take to do the calculation. And then whenever you come back to that calculation later, either to verify the calculation from before, or you do another experiment that try to change something, then you know that how you do it the first time, and you can verify it. So, yeah, basically the way we use Jupyter Notebook is usually our analysts have their own in local, but we also set up a couple servers for easy sharing between people. So if they would like download some data to their local laptop, save it in their local, and then upload it to the internal Jupyter Notebook, and then all the managements can just see there and then discuss over emails or Slack. Okay. Next. The next one is Etl Process. So for this one, what we do is that we have a lot of services now in Gojek after a couple of years. At the moment, I think it's about 100 more services, each with their own application database, and then each with their own schemas. And then sometimes the database are RDBMS, like Postgres or MySQL, or sometimes we use MongoDB, and sometimes we use whatever else is appropriate. Now, that is a good thing in the view of an application developer, because then everything is isolated and is easy to scale. But from the view of a BI analyst, it's a nightmare to work with, because then you have to connect to multiple databases, and then, as you know, it's not easy to combine those data. So what we do in BI Gojek to help those other analysts is that we pull the data and then put it into a single place that then the analyst can work on. Now, for this, we do use Python a lot. It's maybe about 40 to 60%. The other tools that we use for the ETL process are Java applications and Java code. And the reason that we still use Java is that sometimes the transformation needs a lot of CPU power that we don't have the time to figure out with Python. But then most of the time, Python is really great and good enough for our needs. So, okay, so I will, yeah. Okay, so I will give a real example, well, kind of real. So back in 2015, we have 150 gigabytes of data in just a single MySQL box. And then 2 years later, we have 15 terabytes of data. And that's spread out in multiple places, but still in easily accessible database. So one Postgres has like 9 terabytes disks. And then there's also some stuff in the cloud. So the growth of data in Gojek is very big. And even this number is just like 5% of the actual number the actual data that we have. So the job of BI is also to throw away data that no one cares. Because many people would say that keep all of your data. They might be useful later to data mine or something, but then it just becomes so much stuff to go through, then it's better to clean up early and then keep just the stuff that you actually use. Now, initially we just have 10 scripts running in cron jobs on a single server, but now we have 900 tasks and 53 DAGs. So the screenshot to the right is the screenshot of a project called Apache Airflow. It's a project written in Python as well. So Apache is a tool that helps you to do workflows, you schedule it, and then it can also handle dependency between the tasks. So DAG is a directed acyclic graph, so you can, as long as your task doesn't have cyclic dependencies, then you put them together in Airflow, and then it handles the sequence of the execution and make sure that they happen according to the graph. Now, why do we use Airflow for this? The previous approach of using cron jobs introduced a lot of issues. One, it's not reliable because cron jobs do fail once in a while. And then two, it's hard to keep track of what's going on once you have 900 tasks from a single cron job. And then three, it's hard to deploy, I guess, because we want to make sure that all of our deployment happens automatically, and then we try to keep away from having people SSH to the boxes that we use. So all of our deployment are triggered from Git commits, and we have CI pipelines for that. So Airflow helps as well with that. But the other thing is we want to make sure that if the running of one job is ongoing, but we need to change the code of the other job, they will not interrupt each other. So you could create ETLs with just a single app, but then whenever you deploy, then everything will goes down. So that's why we keep all of our jobs as separate scripts. They would run as independent tasks, but managed by Airflow. Next. Okay, so this is the other stuff that we built. So this is a screenshot of our Slack channel. So in Gojek, we communicate a lot using Slack. The reason is because we have people in 3 different time zones and multiple cities in Indonesia. So one of the tools we built are Slack bots that could answer stuff that people commonly ask about to us. So the left screenshot is a bot called BI bot that's written in Python as well. Well, both bots are written in Python. So the left one is an ID. Have you ever played Pokemon? The one on the phone, Pokemon, what was that? Basically, you can go around and collect Pokemons. Pokemon Go, thank you. So one of the technology that they use there to to manage the geospatial data is something called S2ID. So Google just recently re-released their library to handle that, and Gojek also uses this a lot. So S2ID basically maps two-dimensional coordinates into a single integer that you can easily index with, you can easily index and make fast spatial search. And then why does it matter? Because our business rules, a lot of our business rules depends on these IDs, and sometimes the ops team will ask, what's the S2 ID of pens? Because maybe we want to do some promo in only affecting pens. And then the other one is Rain Woman. So it's basically a bot that tells us when it's raining. Now, the reason why do we need to build a bot that tells us when it's rain? Why not just look outside at the window? The reason is whenever rain happens, then drivers stop picking up orders, and then we got a lot of alerts, and then people in Bangalore would go into a panic mode. So basically, we built the bot so they don't go panicking just yet. Okay, so the tailored automated reports are kind of boring actually. So we just use some basic Python library, matplotlib, with Seaborn, Polyum. The thing that's really interesting is that despite us building a lot of dashboards, we also still send email digest, especially to managements and the business people. The reason is that we are sending like 300 more emails daily, and every emails are sent to multiple different groups. Now, if your boss have to go through multiple dashboards just to get a view of what's going on in his company at the time, then he won't be pleased. That's why we still send emails to them, because it's easier for them to just scroll through the pictures and maybe complain later if business isn't going good. Okay, so this is the list of Python users in Gojek, and then I guess I'm done. Okay, so I want to talk a bit more about how the other teams in Gojek use Python. So code quality automation. This is the thing that our developers are made to do. Basically, whenever they do a code commit, they need to make sure that the code has a coverage report, and then it has documentation. So we are using Python scripts that is triggered whenever a GitLab pipelines happens, and then it would generate the report that, oh, your code has 90% coverage, this is good, or oh, you don't have tests on this part of the code. So that's one. QA, testing automation, is also the other thing that we use Python for. Even though our apps are written in multiple languages, sometimes we need to test before we even write the code. So why we use Python for that? Because we don't want to write tests for a code that is more complex than the code that we are testing. So Python keeps the simplicity low and make sure that our tests are actually correct instead of writing the wrong test for the wrong code. And then we also have infra automation. So let's see. We are currently on cloud, and we have like 2,000 to 3,000 boxes that we have to manage. And all of that is managed through infra automation. One of the tools that we use is Ansible. So it's a Python tool, but basically you can describe your infrastructure, your boxes, your machines, how they connect to each other, and what their configurations are using just YAML data. And then it will read the data and then run the code and make sure that you have the infra that you need. So I think it also works with OpenStack, so maybe you could try it with NeoCloud. And then beside that, we also use non-Python tools. They're mostly Chef, but we are moving away from that because we are going to containerization, and we are still going to keep using Ansible. And then security testing. Security testing, I've explained about it. So machine learning is the things that the data science and fraud analysis team is doing. So I don't really need to explain a lot, I guess, about this because people here must have heard about machine learning. They use Python a lot for it, but mostly in the training process. But deployment of the models to production is done using different languages. So we have Scala codes and Java codes and Golang codes that actually run the model in production. But all the trainings are done by the analysts or by the scientists using Python because it's the best workflow for them. So we have clear definition on when to use Python and when not to use Python. And then, yeah, so isn't there any backend apps that are written in Python? So actually, 3 months back, we are trying to create one backend apps that are written in Python, but we're having performance issues. So the prototype is written in Python, but then its response time is a bit slow, about 10 milliseconds. So that's why we cannot deploy that into production. And maybe we will look into how it goes after we figure out the kinks of it. We'll see. Okay, so this is the third part of my talk, what we learned in using Python. So there are niches that Python fits perfectly in Gojek, and we've identified that. I will talk a bit more about this later. And then I want to share what are the pain points of using Python in production in Gojek. And then what are the guidelines that we adhere to when we are using Python? Well, not just Python, but it applies to a lot of languages. And then since in Gojek we are using multiple languages, then interestingly that you can learn a lot from other languages, and then when you go back to Python, your knowledge about Python increase. So I want to share some about that as well. So the use cases. As I've explained before, the use cases are things that the BI team and the data scientist team have been doing. Python is good for data analysis, machine learning, data processing, because it makes it easy for you to work with that data. There's a lot of libraries that supports it. We really love the PyData libraries like Pandas, NumPy, SciPy. So that's the things that we use it for a lot. And then when I said that we keep separate niches for Python and other languages, so when do we use Python? First is that when time of execution is important, when we want to release something fast, when we want to answer some questions fast, and then when the amount of data that we are processing is still reasonable. So like stuff that can be loaded into memory or stuff that can be streamed, that's a good sign that we want to use Python for that. And then when should we not use Python is that when we do need a lot of CPU power, so using Python is too expensive for that. So that's one use case that we don't. And then when we need to have massive parallelism and concurrency, so you can use Python, but usually if you have ever heard about a library called Odo, it's also from PyData group. So basically Python is just the API wrapper that then sends instruction to CUDA or GPU, but then all of those computations are not happening in Python. Yeah, basically that. So the pain points in production. Compared to other languages that we have used We found it painful to do automated builds with Python. The reason is that the tooling around Python, even though there's a lot, it's still rough around the edges. So, like, it's been like 70 years since setup tools was released. I'm not sure if that's the right year, but yeah. So it's hard to make sure that whatever you built in your machine could be built again and deployed in the exact same configuration in production. So that's one of the pain points that we face. And then freshening and dependency management. Now, just like last year, I guess, Kenneth Rates just released a library called pipenv. So it's a wrapper on virtualenv and pip that will help you do dependency management in Python. So you can just put list of packages that you use and then the versions, and then it will pull all the packages with the same version, making sure that they are the same as exactly as what you want, instead of just the latest version. Because sometimes when a new version comes and then you have breakage because the API changes, you want to avoid that to happen in production. Okay. The other pain points are deployments. So we created our own deployments pipeline. So the thing is, because we don't really have Python application in production as services, then we still need to invest some time to build the toolings around it. And mostly it's because of the build process and the versioning. And performance is obvious, I guess. So guidelines we adhere to. So when we use Python, especially in BI, do we use functional codes or OOP? Now, personally, I dislike OOP a lot. So usually the codes that I review and the BI team uses is mostly functional. We want to keep the code simple, small, and readable. And then it doesn't have mutable states. And then basically it works with inputs and then outputs some data. And I think that approach worked very well with the way we in BI are using, because we're using to transform data. So it's basically pipelines of processing. And then composability, so we can combine multiple scripts just by passing the inputs and outputs of those scripts. So one of the stuff that we do in Airflow is making sure that each script creates intermediate data, and then we run the script to create another data until we get the last results that we want. But we still can use that intermediate data for the output of multiple other tasks. So that's why we organize our codes around that approach. And don't repeat yourself. So this usually comes from the OOP world. But basically, keep your code reusable, and there should not be copy-paste happening. So testing, we do unit tests, integration tests. It's actually harder to do unit testing for data transformation. So usually, most of it is integration and functional tests. And then we do benchmarks. So when I'm going to share an experience. So one time we have to process some geospatial data, and then we're using Python, but it's taking like an hour just to process 1 gigabyte of data. So once we benchmark and we figure out that it's actually too many abstractions, and then we remove that and going lower in the Python code, and we can change it into just 1 second. So Python can be fast, it can be slow, and it depends on how you're using it. Guess all the rest is not really relevant. Configuration and runtime, you can read that. But the last part is the really important part. So documentation. What we really like from Python is that you can write inline comments and then just use docutils to generate your code, your documentation, sorry. So this is the Zen of Python. I'm pretty sure every one of you know about it, and if you don't, you should. So this is the teachings that make you a better Python programmer. I quoted this from somewhere in Python blog, I forgot. So yeah, knowing this makes you a better Python programmer. It also makes you a better programmer in general. You can use this words to help you work on other languages. So applying learnings from other languages. So as I said before, we use Java, Clojure, Scala, Golang, and stuff. And each languages has their different capabilities. But then after working with other languages for a while, you always want to come back to Python. So I actually first start using async in Python after I start using it in Clojure and Golang. And then there's also Python IR tools. Basically, you works with generators and iterators and work with streams that I started using it after playing with Scala. So my suggestion is that even though you really like Python, it's also good to learn other languages, and then when you come back to Python, it will make you a better programmer. Last part is that Python works well with other languages, not just because it has a lot of libraries that supports it. You can connect Python with R. You can connect Python with Rust. So if I'm not mistaken, there's a talk after this about using Python with Rust. And obviously, Python with C is the best part of it. Okay, I guess that's all. Any questions? No? No? Okay. Thank you.